Now let's talk about deciding what kind of investment property you want to purchase. As you know, the categories that I would kind of break them into for your first investment, you're going to be looking at either a detached home slash townhouse, you're going to be looking at a condo, you're going to be looking at a multi-unit property, which is 2 or more units, or you might be looking at a vacation property. Let's go through some of the pros and cons. So if you're going through a detached home or a townhouse, you're going to have a lot more maintenance. Reason being, as I mentioned in the previous segment, you're going to have things to worry about: roof, foundation, windows, furnace, AC, plumbing, electrical, everything. Every facet of a working house you have to maintain. So if this is your first investment property, understand that you are now taking care of 2 properties. As well, with it being a single unit, if you put a tenant in there, the end of the lease comes up, they move out, and you don't re-rent it right away, you now have a vacancy of a month, maybe 2 months before you get the next tenant in there. And that can actually mean that you're gonna have to carry 2 mortgages for that time period. 2 property taxes, everything's coming out of your pocket. So just be prepared that that could happen to you, and you gotta know that you can float that if it happens. Another thing is, it can be easier to manage. So instead of a multi-unit where you're dealing with multiple tenants and certain issues that they might have, this is just one tenant. You can charge, the rent, they pay the utilities, they set the utilities up in their name. You don't have to worry about it. They can be responsible for cutting the grass, shoveling the snow. So that's a little bit nicer than a multi-unit where you may have to hire a service to go in and do those things, because one of the tenants can't, or you make one of the tenants responsible for doing it, which we'll get into as well. These weren't really a great option over the last couple of years. Reason being, the market, obviously prices went crazy. You couldn't even break even by buying a single house and renting it out. We are starting to see that come back onto the horizon, but we're not quite there yet. So this right now is a first investment property as of July 15th, 2022. Might not be the greatest investment, but it is coming that way. Let's talk about condos. Condos are a little more turnkey. Reason being is the condo corporation is responsible for everything outside of the unit. So that means the windows, the roof, if it's a condo townhouse, or if it's just regular condo, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You just worried for what's inside the unit, so it's a lot less maintenance. The only thing to consider with condo is there is the condo fees, which can go up at any time as well. If it's a poorly managed condo, you might get hit with a special assessment, which means, say the roof of the building all of a sudden needs to be done and it wasn't prepared for by the condo corporation, you might get slapped with a $10,000 bill that you got to pay right away. So you have a little bit less control, but it's turnkey. I know a lot of out-of-town investors like condos because they do sort of run themselves. You just pick a tenant, they live in there, they set up the utilities in their name, and you really don't have to deal with much on the inside of the unit. So they're a little bit more of a hands-off investment, but they can have big expenses in the long run if you're purchasing an older unit. Let's talk about multi-units. This is my favorite, but they are a little bit more expensive. I have a multi-unit. I love it. It's 2 units. The reason I like it is if one tenant were to leave, I still do have somebody in there helping to pay the expenses, which is great. As well, you cash flow a bit better on multi-units. For example, if you purchase a single family home on the East Mountain, the East Streets, you probably rent it out for $3,000 to $3,200 a month. If you buy a mountain like home, same thing, bungalow, but it's 2 units, a legal 2 units, you could probably collect $4,200 to $4,300 a month. So you get that extra $1,000 a month, which really helps towards cash flow and gives you a bit of a cushion there. And that's why I like multi-unit. But one thing to consider with multi-unit, now you're dealing with more tenants. You got to make sure that there's a good cohesion between the tenants. One thing I do is I usually just do it inclusive with expenses, because I don't want tenants to get upset at each other over things like, one guy takes a shower too long, or somebody runs the dryer all day, or doing laundry on peak hours so the hydro is higher. Like that sort of stuff I don't really want to deal with. So it's better to just charge a bit more and put them in there. And as well, picking tenants is important because, like I said, you want to make sure that you have that cohesion. Vacation properties. Go back to episode 29. Alex Hill was on here. He owns a cottage that he rents out on Airbnb. It was full of fantastic information if you want to purchase a vacation property. My biggest thing with this is, if it's a vacation property and it's far away, You have to understand that it could be a little bit difficult to do maintenance just because it is so far away. The one benefit, Alex essentially has a free cottage because he rents it out throughout the year. He uses it when he wants to use it. But when he's not going to use it, he just rents it and it pays for all the expenses. So it's a nice little break as well. He'll even sometimes on a peak weekend like Canada Day, even though he wants to go to the cottage, he'll rent it out because maybe he needs that money to do a renovation on his property. So you can use these as your first investment with flexibility. If you want a vacation property for free, that's an option. But the financing is way different with those things. Go back, episode 29, watch it if you want to know all about vacation properties. And I guess that's pretty much a different type of properties that I recommend for your first investment. I wouldn't recommend getting into commercial. I just think there's just too much involved with that. The leases are very different. I think residential should be your first investment as a first investment property. If you guys have more questions about these types of properties specifically, drop a comment below. I'd love to answer them.